Balance is one of those sacred words in game design, like polish, fairness, and fun. We chase it relentlessly. We nerf, buff, tweak, patch, and rebalance forever. But what if I told you that in single player games, balance is overrated and sometimes even harmful? Today, we're going to unpack why that's true in 2025, in an era when players value meaningful choices, emergent stories, theme over symmetry, and emotional impact more than mathematical equality. For many players and designers, balance means equilibrium. Every weapon does equal damage, every skill is as viable as every other, every scenario can be solved optimally. For competitive games, this makes sense. In PvP, fairness is essential, but in single-player experiences, the stakes are different. You're playing against a world, a story, a fantasy, not another human's ego. Because of that, balance becomes less about mathematical fairness and more about narrative weight, player expression, and curiosity-driven systems. Some of the most memorable moments in single-player games come from imbalance, unexpected allies, overpowered abilities that feel empowering, or dramatic shifts that make players rethink their strategies. In this video, we'll break down why balance can be overrated, when imbalance can elevate, and how designers can intentionally sculpt imbalanced systems that feel meaningful, memorable, and emotionally resonant, rather than frustrating or unfair. Balance versus meaning. In single player games, the player's experience is the primary product, not the competition or ranking. This means that designers should prioritize meaningful decisions over perfect symmetry. A perfectly balanced RPG build might be mathematically justifiable, but if it isn't fascinating or fun to use, players will gravitate towards outliers, the weird, broken, and memorable, rather than the textbook choices. Psychological research from 2025 shows that players derive more satisfaction from expression and discovery rather than from optimal efficiency. People enjoy underpowered classes, experimental builds, and quirky strategies because they express personality and invite creative problem solving, even if they aren't balanced. Balance in single-player spaces can flatten these creative choices. For example, in Indian AAA games alike, from Disco Elysium to Baldur's Gate 3, players often talk more about the weird builds and obscure decisions that work rather than optimal choices. Those moments tell personal stories. Imbalance becomes part of player narrative. The chaotic maze that destroyed a boss by accident, the unorthodox path that unlocked hidden loot, of the absurd dialogue choice that changed an entire quest arc. In this sense, balance becomes a baseline, not an ideal. What players crave is impactful choice, not symmetrical power curves. A game that rewards experimentation and tolerates imbalance invites players to create stories, and that's often more valuable than balancing every integer. The emotional logic of imbalance. Balance implies predictability. If every choice leads to a similar outcome, players know what to expect, and anticipation drops. But imbalance introduces drama. When a player knows that a choice might make the character drastically stronger or significantly weaker, or that an NPC favor can dramatically shift the narrative, every decision feels weighty. Take unbalanced power shifts in games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, or Eternal. These games are not balanced in a symmetrical mathematical sense. Some builds, weapons, and combinations are stronger than others. Yet players celebrate this. No one complains that the game is unfair so much as they delight in mastering the asymmetry. That's because the challenge curve and risk reward feedback makes sense at a human level, even if it doesn't at an algebraic one. In narrative context, imbalance can highlight theme. Imagine a game where you sacrifice humanity for power, and those choices make combat easier but story harder. The imbalance is intentional and it supports the emotional arc. That's powerful design. Balance can ensure fairness, but imbalance drives meaning. It creates consequences that resonate emotionally and narratively, even if they aren't balanced in the strictest formulaic sense. Systems outliers and player agency. Many game systems leverage emergent complexity, where simple rules combine to create unpredictable outcomes. In such systems, strict balance often collapses under its own weight. When designers attempt to mathematically balance every possible interaction, the result can be boring or artificial, like prescribing a single correct way to play. Instead, some of the best single-player games embrace controlled imbalance. Systems where asymmetrical combos exist, but players discover them through experimentation rather than being handed perfect equilibrium charts. This is part of the thrill, the joy of finding something that works because you thought differently. Think of games where experimental builds become legends in community lore. When imbalance emphasizes agency, Letting choices produce divergent outcomes rather than predictable mosaics, games feel alive. Players feel like authors of stories, not followers of optimized charts. Why perfect balance can backfire. One of the problems with striving for perfect balance is that it often erases quirks, the asymmetrical interactions that make play memorable. When studios patch overpowered gear into oblivion or nerf abilities for the sake of statistical fairness, players often feel like something fun was taken away. Perfect balance can make games homogenized, predictable, and safe, exactly the opposite of exciting. From Persona to Baldur's Gate 3, the trend shows players increasingly value choice diversity over strict optimization. On Reddit and Discord, communities celebrate builds that aren't meta, but feel fun, thematic, or really effective. Meta play by definition shrinks diversity, imbalance often expands it. Furthermore, balance that is too rigid also hurts narrative tension. If every choice leads to the same average outcome, the story loses its highs and lows, its emotional peaks and valleys. Narrative pacing thrives on differential stakes. Some choices matter more, some paths are riskier, some outcomes are dramatically different. In single player design, meaningful imbalance becomes a tool for pacing, tension, and emotional depth, not a flaw to be corrected. When balance still matters. This isn't a manifesto against all balance. Balance still matters, but for different reasons than you might assume. In single player games, balance should serve clarity, accessibility, and player expectations, not sameness. Players should understand how a system behaves, even if it can be bent, broken, or abused. Moreover, balance can be essential for onboarding, making early encounters feel fair enough that players build competence. It can prevent avoidable frustration that leads to quitting, or breakpoints where players feel that the game is unwinnable. But that's more about learning curves than perfect symmetry. Furthermore, balance can also serve accessibility, ensuring that the players with various skill levels can find playable styles without hitting dead ends. Today's games increasingly offer toggles, adaptive difficulty patterns, and alternate progression paths that are balanced against experience, not power numbers. The key is to balance the experience curve, not just tactical outcomes. Allow imbalance to exist, but frame it so players feel confident exploring it, not punished or misled by it. How to design intentional imbalance. So, how do you design imbalance on purpose without it feeling unfair or chaotic? There are four foundational strategies designers use. The first is intentional power tiers. Define clear difference where some tools are stronger by design, but context matters. A weapon may be overpowered in one environment and underpowered in another, creating situational depth rather than oppressive hierarchy. The second is expressive risk reward. Let players trade safety for power or vice versa. When the game makes the trade-off explicit, imbalance feels like agency, not confusion. Choices become stories. The third is emergent play space. Build systems that allow unexpected combinations and let players discover, discuss, and celebrate them. Support creativity rather than suppress edge cases. And the fourth one is feedback and signaling. When imbalance arises, signal why it happened through effects, UI cues, so players understand the logic behind it. Because confusion is the enemy of fun. So, designers can create spaces of imbalance that feel good because they make sense contextually and support expressive play rather than arbitrary chaos. Balance isn't useless, but in single-player games, perfection can be overrated when it removes character, curiosity, and emotional engagement. Single-player experiences are about story, identity, impact, and expression. Imbalance, if carefully sculpted, can be the engine that drives those elements home. Because players don't always want a perfect rock-paper system. What they want is a canvas where choices feel meaningful, risks feel dramatic, and outcomes tell story. Those experiences stick with us long after balanced spreadsheets and patch notes are forgotten. But what about you? Do you think balance is overrated in single player games? Let's talk in the comments down below. And if you like this video, click like, share, and subscribe to watch more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay silver.